you came here very early. So now what the program looks like is that we'll start with the opening remarks. We have our guest of honors here. We have the UNDP representative, and we have the PS Minister of Women Affairs here. We have our resource persons, Ms. Nene Cham, Emily Sar, Sidi Njai. They're all here with us. So, and you yourself are here, so I think we should just proceed with our program. We had expected breakfast in the morning, but we were told it will only be ready at 10. So we apologize for that, and we'll make sure that at 10 o'clock we find our way to where the breakfast facilities are, and then we'll come back and continue with our session. We don't want to make it tedious because it's supposed to be a mind an attitude type of workshop. So that's why it's just half a day, just a few hours, just to challenge your minds and your perceptions and your attitudes about unconscious bias. So with that said, I think I can, I want to assume you have the copy of the program? No? No? Binta, you are distributing the program? Yes, okay, so. Can I have the updated version? I have the old version. Yeah, more or less the same, more or less the same. So the program, we start at the opening remarks. Then we start with the session 1, Legal Aspects of Gender Equality by Ms. Nene Cham. Then we have the session 2 with the Gender Parity Gap by Madame Emily Sarr. Then we have the third session, Unconscious Bias and Its Importance by myself. And then we have discussions and questions and answers and examples, comments chaired by CD Abinjai. Then the coffee is we're supposed to have coffee, or we'll see how far we go, then we'll have coffee, and then we have introduction to the Gender Equality Sales Program by Fatou Jallo. So, and then we close. I want to say lunch, but I'm not sure also. So I think Mariama Diba and maybe they'll confirm, and Frida, you'll confirm about the lunch and all other logistics. So thank you very much. Without taking more time, I'd like to take this opportunity to start our welcoming session, our first session. Want to recognize the UNDP resident representative, Mr. Abdul Ture, our one and only permanent secretary, Minister of Women Affairs, Madame Rohi Bite Dabo, my colleagues, CD Abinjai of Masters Associates, and Ms. Ramungay of Bridging Gap Advisory. She was supposed to join through online. I don't know whether that's possible. Ms. Nene Cham. Your name of your chambers? And Madame Emily Sarr, consultant and gender expert. Madame Fatou Jallo of Bridging Gap Advisory. distinguished participants, both male and female, UNDP officials who are here present making this happen, media here representative present, and all protocol observed. So as I said before, this is a very important workshop, and it is part of being aware of gender disparity, gender gap, gender issues. And it's really geared for promoting gender equality at workplace. We are grateful for UNDP to take this up together with ourselves and the Ministry of Women Affairs to fully collaborate to make this happen today. You know, the corporate world needs more women, and this has been confirmed by several studies done by Harvard Business School, MIT, Stanford University, that we need to increase the number of women in corporate world. And the main reason for the gap, it's not that the women are not there, it's just that the male have been there before the female. So now it's just to bridge that gap, to encourage, to give space the female so that they can also participate fully in the corporate world. So that is the main purpose of this workshop, as one of the ways of bridging this gap at the corporate world, working place, and many other areas, including the politics, the political arena, and many other areas. You always find that there is a disparity between gender and in the gender aspects between male and female. And this is because of many other things, and one of them is the unconscious bias that we all carry with us. So we want to bring this awareness of unconscious biases that we carry with us and try to do something about them. So, as I said, efforts are being made by our government, our development partners, and we ourselves. We want to see that there are more female in the corporate world, in the political world, in participating in the building our societies and making them more aware of gender issues. So with that being said, I'd like to invite the UN representative to make his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that very relevant introductory statements. Madam Chair, PS Ministry of Women, Children and Social Welfare. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gender now. Okay. Distinguished heads of government institutions, private enterprises, and civil society organizations represented here, media representatives, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly and respectfully observed. I am delegated to read a statement on behalf of the UNDP Rashtra, who is nobody other than Aissata Day, who due to unavoidable circumstances could not be present here physically, but I know wherever she is with us in spirit, because gender issues are so dear to her. It's a core issue in UNDP in our work, but it's so personally, she has personal passion for gender issues. So I'm reading this statement on her behalf. This statement rates. I am delighted to be here today to be part of this important conversation on the effects of unconscious bias against women in workplaces, particularly for senior male officials, which is a widespread and complicated consequences of gender norms and inequalities. Gender equality is the fifth goal of the 17 Global Sustainable Development Goals and lies at the heart of any development programming. It is not surprising, therefore, that the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women is central to the mandate of UNDP and intrinsic to its development approach. UNDP advocates for women's and girls' equal rights and works closely with UN sister agencies, national governments, and other stakeholders to combat discriminatory practices whilst challenging the roles and stereotypes that affect inequalities and exclusion of women. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I call on all public and private enterprises present here today and those not here to go beyond discussions held during this seminar through to actions. My message to you is to implement national policies and use available resources to counter discrimination in your workplace through education, awareness raising, positive affirmative actions, and enforcement of accountability mechanisms. When properly implemented, anti-discriminatory policies in workplaces result in a more just and equitable work environment. It also creates a greater efficiency and staff performance. It also enhances employment competence and commitment, reduces staff turnover, and creates accountability and transparency in institutions. Biases against women result in discrimination, harassment, and even violence. They negatively affect the meaningful participation of women in decision-making platforms, and they result in the infringement of the rights of women in the workplace, including access to employment, learning, and promotion opportunities. It is an undisputed fact that for the organizations to strive, places of work must be free from all forms of discrimination and harassment. Employers have a legal and moral responsibility to ensure that women avail equal opportunities for employment at all levels, especially in senior management roles, which globally show the greatest gender disparities, as highlighted by the chair. Equally, employers have a legal and moral responsibility to promote the welfare of employees, especially women and other persons more prone to discrimination and harassment. Multiple resources have been developed over the years aimed at tackling discrimination and harassment in workplaces, especially the recently launched Sexually Harassment in Workplaces policy, spearheaded by the National Human Rights Commission. It is also worth mentioning the UNDP Gender Equality Seal certification program for private enterprises, which in partnership with the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry have registered 6 Gambian companies for a pilot of the private sector seal. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Gambia, the underrepresentation of women in leadership and decision-making roles is often quoted as a serious hindrance to sustainable national development, which is true. However, of equal great concern is the prevalence of harassment and discrimination against women in the Gambian workplace. A recent national study on this subject has revealed that 75% of the workers have experienced sexual harassment over the last 5 years, and that 8 in every 10 persons sexually harassed was a woman. It is fundamentally for all stakeholders to continue to study and address the root causes of gender inequalities, including discriminatory beliefs and practices that continue to hinder women from realizing their full potentials. The UNDP country office will continue to support national initiatives geared towards achieving gender equality by working closely and supporting all actors promoting gender equality in the Gambia. On that note, thank you for your kind attention. The statement ends.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very insightful statement. We've seen that, I'm glad to see that gender equality is one of the
Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs.
It shows that I'm retired. Development goals. So definitely it's important that we get these several goals and
Sorry. Last week.
We're glad to see that you're proposing that studies should be made for the causes of this inequality and actually come up with even more targeted policies to try and reverse what is going on. Without much ado, I think I'd like to welcome the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Human Affairs and Gender, to give a statement and also tell us what she thinks we should also focus during this workshop. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Madam Chairperson, Auntie Lucy, the representative from UNDP, Mr. Abdul Toure, representing the UNDP rep, Mrs. Nene Cham, Mrs. Emily Fonsa, Mr. Sidinjai, the facilitators, senior government officials here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the media, all other protocols respectfully observed. I am honored to be here today to represent the Honorable Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Mrs. Fatou Kinte, and to deliver the opening statement on this half-day seminar on unconscious bias. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, unconscious biases in terms of gender disproportionately affect women negatively, since men dominate the decision-making positions, be it in the home or the workplace. It is true that as human beings, we all have biases, but in most cases, these biases tend to be demonstrated towards minority groups, such as women or sexual orientation, and so forth. Therefore, this seminar is one way of combating unconscious bias in our personal and professional lives to promote gender inclusion and appreciation of diversity, especially around the decision-making tables. As you have already highlighted, The government of the Gambia and our development partners have already made a lot of efforts to mainstream gender in our national development activities. In doing so, the issue of unconscious bias and its impact on women leadership and political participation has been a growing concern, not only for the Gambia, but the world at large. Therefore, I am extremely grateful for this implausible effort made by Bridging Gaps Advisory, Fyen Consultation, and Master Association in ensuring that the topic unconscious bias is the theme for this seminar today. This seminar will undoubtedly have a positive impact on shifting our gender-blind lenses towards a more diverse and inclusive approach. It is gratifying to note that the government of the Gambia has prioritized gender equality and women's empowerment as clearly stated in our National Development Plan, as one of the 7 critical enablers of progressive Gambian economy. All sectors are therefore expected to commit to the leveling up opportunities for everyone, moreover women, and integrate relevant gender issues into their plans as an integral part of their work to eliminate all forms of discrimination in their employment processes. Sectors are expected to identify gender issues within their work frameworks and define mechanisms for integrating them into policies, plans, programs, and actions for implementation. These efforts by the government therefore strongly demonstrate the strong link between women leadership and participation in the Gambia. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the government will continue to put the right legal frameworks and policies in place to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women, girls, and minority groups. The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare will continue to engage all relevant stakeholders to mainstream gender in all sectoral policies and programs and effectively increase women participation in project implementation and community representation and decision-making bodies in all areas. We will continue to sensitize the public and raise awareness on both conscious and unconscious biases that could slow down the development of our country due to the negative effects on achieving gender equality and women empowerment, since women are more than 50% of the population. Such prolific initiatives in the Gambia could be emulated by other countries if it happens. Having mentioned some of the actions we have taken as a government to specifically tackle the barriers to women leadership, I would also like to take this opportunity to highlight a very important component of women's leadership, that is the inclusion of women with disabilities. 10% of the Gambian population are people with disabilities, and we should therefore seek to involve them in our leadership role to enable us meet our all-inclusive women leadership goals, aspirations, and the protocol of leaving no one behind. This brings me to the need to recognize unconscious gender bias as it relates to culture, social norms, and stereotyping of women. We need to sensitize our people on unconscious biases not only today, but also every other day, as this will ensure that the inclusion of women in key decision-making areas is achieved. We must continue to encourage women to take up leadership positions, but with the promise that we will support them all through. In conclusion, I would once again like to commend Bridging Gaps Advisory, Fyen Consulting, and Master Associates for this laudable initiative of organizing such an important seminar. We look forward to fruitful discussions and positive outcome of this half-day seminar on the participants' perceptions and behavior vis-a-vis women participation in national development. By the end of the day, I am hopeful that we will become more aware of our conscious and unconscious gender biases that will in turn enable us to make judgments and decision-making choices that are more sensitive on women leadership opportunities. I now have the singular honor to declare this half-day seminar open. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Now I think we, thank you very much, PS, of gender children and social welfare. Now I got it right, not just women affairs. This was really motivating statement, and thank you for opening the workshop. As you rightly say, we have to really take it upon ourselves to encourage women to take leadership position. And this year, the onus is on us to encourage more women to participate in politics. As you can tell by now, I think it's a little bit sketchy. I don't think there are not many women coming up, especially on the highest ticket. Presidential, it's only one, but the rest are male. So again, you could see it's always there. It's right in our face, and it's something to be aware of, and just to be aware of and see how best we can deal with that. So we will definitely take this part, your statements, your concerns, and during the rest of the day as we go ahead. Now, do you want to stay or you want to?
Yes,
You stay.
sometime.
So I think I was waiting to see whether we should take a breakfast break or not, but the person to let me know is not here. So I think maybe we should just continue with our second item of the agenda, which we are starting with the first presentation on legal aspects of gender equality. And this will be presented by Ms. Nene Cham is one of our distinguished lawyers in the country. And I think one area that you find quite a lot of female is in the law business. Yeah. So she's one of our prominent lawyers in the country. She runs her own chambers, and she's also sits at the board of Gambia Women Chambers of Commerce. We sit in that board together. You can see that she really has women issues at heart, and she will now tell us about her perspective, her thinking on legal aspects on gender equality, how women are affected when gender issues legally, when gender disparity is in place. Thank you very much. I think we're just waiting for the presentation to be pulled up.
I think, are you going to move? Move to the other side?
You can walk there, or we can move. You prefer to move? Okay, we can move. Yeah, we can move and we can go to the other side. Otherwise, you could walk.
No, no. I.
Oh, okay.
Dia manjat nak. Manjat. Manjat. When you them film, I think it's why do you want to sit at the back? Yes. I forgot. I thought you put it.
Yeah, just sit at the
Still there.
Siri,
Yes.
is it possible to move the center?
Of course,
Eject.
So you move at the center.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Just a little bit of a technical hitch with the presentation. Just waiting on a decision of whether to go ahead or maybe have somebody else present while we sort that out. It might be better to do that. Thank you. Wow. The line. Okay. All right, then bring it here. Any problem, then you can start. Can you come closer to me? No? Yes, I'll just try to read from, I'll try to read from here. It's okay. I'll just have to try. Yes, you plan and then technology says something else. We apologize for that hitch. Good morning once again, everybody, distinguished participants, distinguished members of the High Table, the sponsors, UNDP, Lucy, Mrs. Lucy Fyen, Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, and all other protocol, my favorite teacher, Mrs. Inelisa, and all other protocols respectfully observed. It is indeed a pleasure to be invited to this very important workshop on unconscious bias for senior male officials. My topic is the legal aspects of gender equality, and I intend to take you through the framework, the laws and policies perhaps that govern and will seek to ensure that we have gender equality in the Gambia. Next slide. Yes, it will first of all be very helpful. I wish I could move it myself. Yes, first of all, it will be helpful to examine what gender is all about. And gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, expressions, and identities of us as girls, women, and men, and how that expression is perceived by others. It's a loaded definition, but that's what it means, and that's what separates it from or distinguishes it from sex. When you say sex, it's simply male, female. When you say gender, it's a bit more loaded. Next slide, please. Somebody's doing double work today. In other words, it's a more complex concept. You just pull it out. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Expert. Thank you. Yes, in other words, it's a more complex concept that refers to individuals or society's understanding of what it means to feel and look and act, either feminine, masculine, or any other type. So gender equality is achieved when both men and women are afforded equal opportunity in all respects, including at work. And that is the very subject of today's seminar. People tend to say, oh, equality, equality, what does it mean? There's no equality in the true sense in anything. Our fingers, the way we look. When we talk about equality, we talk about equal opportunities. What is accorded one is accorded another. The Global Gender Gap Report of 2020, the Gambia Gender Report of 2013, as well as the survey conducted by Bridging Gaps Advisory in 2017, all indicate a huge gap between the lower percentage of representation of women as compared to men in decision making. It's already been alluded to by the speakers in the opening ceremony. It's no secret. Women constitute 51% of the population, and that's globally, including in the Gambia. So really there is something wrong when in key decision-making positions, or anywhere for that matter, you find that the number of women is very low, particularly in this day and age when women are equally more educated, more dedicated, more committed to working in nation building. So it is a fact that unconscious bias, to a large extent, can be blamed for this. And that is why we have this workshop here today on the topic. It is a reality, as I said, that we form the majority. Before I delve into my topic proper, I want to ask the question, when we, and I'm thinking as a man here, particularly men, think of women's rights, whose rights are we talking about? Let's be subjective, let's be practical. And the answer inevitably is our dear mothers. They are women. When we talk about rights, we're talking about their rights. Everybody should just think, we're talking about your mother's rights. Our beloved daughters, our sisters, our aunts, our dear grandmothers who are our wives as well, granddaughters, nieces, and of course, last but certainly not the least, our better halves, our dearest wives without whom we are not complete. So I want us to just stop there and think. When we talk about women's rights, women, these are the people we're talking about, not strangers from Mars, not your competitors, not people who are there to take your job. Because I get this from men a lot of the time, because they know that we are the women's rights advocates. But you want to take over the world. And I used to say, no, we just want equal opportunities. But now I can say more. Now I want to say, if our hard work gives us the world, we'll take the world. We'll take the world as women. And what is wrong with that anyway? Men have taken the world since this world came into being. It is not a competition. We're meant to complement each other as men and women. If the man succeeds, as Just like I've given the example of the woman, our fathers have said, anything to promote and protect the rights of your wives, your daughters, your daughters. We know what fathers are like with their daughters. Because if you deny that right to any other woman, you're denying it to your own daughter. You're denying that right to equal opportunity to your own mother, if she needs it, to your own sister, to your own wife, if she's at work and she's being discriminated against. So I want us to bring it down to this level. That's why I was so pleased about this workshop. Because it will help us reflect, not just the men, but also the women, but more the men, because the response we get is like it's so distant. You women, we're so distant. We are not. We are in your homes. We gave birth to it. Of course, with your help, but we did. So if we understand that level, then we know that the fight is everybody's fight. Why must women fight their cause alone? Why must men? Why must the disabled fight their cause alone? We should fight each. We should fight together and make sure that what should happen happens. That we have equal opportunities for women, children, persons with disabilities, and everybody living in this country. Sorry, I can't resist but do this introduction before I go into my legal aspects. It sort of sets the context. That way the barriers are down. No defenses. We're all here to see how we can ensure that there is gender equality in the Gambia, particularly at the workplace. Now, when men think of women as such, rather than as different human beings, as I've just said, then the need to achieve gender equality becomes very clear. As many are not clear about it, and it becomes easy to understand, and it becomes urgent. You can't wait till tomorrow, let's do it now. It is common sense to include women in all sectors and areas of employment at all levels. And so I come to the legal framework for gender equality, which can be found in the international instruments, the regional instruments. The international ones, the key one is the CEDAW, Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, a landmark United Nations convention. And also the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of women in Africa. It was thought that, okay, we had the CEDAW, but Africa needed an instrument that is more closer to home, that is set in the context, that takes into consideration what the African woman is like and needs, both at home, at work, and anywhere else. So that you'll find sections in the protocol, it's called Maputo Protocol. In short, you'll find provisions in there that you will not find in the CEDAW because that is more international. But we needed it, and it has been very helpful. It deals with culture, it deals with social aspects of being African. And we also have the Women's Act, which is the national law. And this act is a very, very comprehensive piece of legislation that embodies all aspects of, it provides for all rights that women should be accorded, including those that have already been provided by the Constitution. That's why I have not mentioned the Constitution. The Constitution has the basic rights, but this one goes even further. And the Women's Act, what is important is that it domesticates the provisions of both the CEDAW and the Maputo Protocol. Because when you sign international instruments, regional instruments, there's an obligation on the government to come back and domesticate. Because otherwise it just becomes, you've just signed something out there and your people are not benefiting from it. So that's why in domestication of those instruments, and also the national policy then for the advancement of women and girls, the Gambia enacted the Women's Act 2010. As I said, landmark law. So it was enacted, as I said, on the 12th of April. It's a historic piece of legislation, a source of hope, peace and prosperity for both men and women in the Gambia. as it recognizes and gives legal effect and force to the Gambia's international obligations, as I've just said. Now, the relevant provisions, I've just picked out a few because it's a short seminar. I begin with section 6.3. Now here, you'd see that by the time you read this subsection, everybody is included. All government departments, agencies, organs, public and private institutions shall take appropriate measures to promote and protect women's rights and their legal status from any form of abuse or violence by any person. So this is a general obligation that is on government and public and private institutions. So everybody is covered here. The government shall, section 7.4 says, talks about legal aid that should be provided, ensures that law enforcement organs at all levels are equipped to effectively interpret and enforce gender equality rights, to ensure that women are equitably represented anywhere else but here, particularly in the judiciary and law enforcement organs of the state. And there's an obligation to take adequate steps to reform existing discriminatory laws and protect, in order to, laws and practices in order to promote and protect the rights of women and children. Section 9, right to freedom from discrimination, because we see that the bias, what does it results in what? Discrimination. That's what it does. When it's unconscious bias, conscious or otherwise, it results in discrimination. It results in denial of the enjoyment of rights that people are entitled to. And it states that a woman shall not be made to suffer any discrimination by reason only that she's a woman. So then we come to the gender again. And 2 would say, in accordance with this section, a woman shall not be subjected either expressly or in the application of any law in the Gambia to disabilities or restrictions to which citizens of the Gambia are generally not made subject. So there you have it. It prohibits, the whole section prohibits discrimination, that people should be free from discrimination. Not that men should not be, but it's the Women's Act, because it is realized that women bear the brunt of all these ills in society. Nothing in this section prevents the making of laws in pursuance of promoting equality. It promotes that. The right to be free from discrimination is another provision, just to buttress the earlier one, saying that even in any other law, if you should have any discriminatory provision in any other law, it will become null and void right away. It should not happen because it will come into conflict with this provision, and it will come into conflict with the provisions in the Constitution. So I don't want to read it all, but you will see that, let me just go back. To the extent that I'm trying to avoid the legal language, but specifically relating to race, color, language, religion, it goes on and on, property, birth. So no discrimination based on any of these qualifications. In the public service, you see, that's number 1. In the disciplined force, that's the armed and security forces. In the service of local government, and D, in any body corporate established by law for public purposes. So you'll see that all institutions, all employers are included in this. And so there's no exception. Nobody can say that, oh, it's only government. It is not. Public and private, the Act is very clear when it talks about discrimination and any other. And it goes ahead, because if you say this is not good, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, and nothing comes out of it, people will continue to do it. So then it prohibits discrimination and therefore creates an offense. It makes it an offense to discriminate against somebody. A person, public institution or private, shall not. In the law, when it says shall not, it means you have no discretion. You just can't do it. Through words spoken, we see how wide the provision is. Through either words that you say, inactions, things that you don't do that you're supposed to do, omissions, laws, regulations, in any way that you do it, if it results in discriminating against women, you have violated it, the section, and you have committed an offense. And it says further that any person, body, institution, you see, it takes the trouble of going through all the different people and institutions, and says that you therefore commit an offense if you do it, and you're liable to pay compensation or court fine or whatever. So the government's obligation to eliminate discrimination is very, very, very clear by the Act. And Section 14 deals with the obligation to take positive measures. And I'm pleased with the statement of the Permanent Secretary on this. And to take positive measures to, in all institutions, agencies and organs, to eliminate. You're supposed to not just not discriminate, but you're also supposed to put measures, positive measures, to ensure that discrimination will not happen. So, in line with the international obligation, because it is an obligation, otherwise Gambia will be taken to task when it attends the international forum. The provision is quite comprehensive and calls on government departments to put measures in place, strategies, policies, whatever, bylaws, regulations, be them in the corporate world or anywhere, to ensure that they eliminate discrimination. And they will be legally binding and should be implemented. It also encourages periodic trainings, something like what we're doing here today, of personnel on gender and human rights and mainstreaming gender perspective in planning and programming, so that it is included in the planning and programming of all institutions. That way it's not taken for granted, and it's a positive measure as required by the earlier provision. Now, specifically, there is a part 5, that was just general, but there's a part 5 that specifically prohibits discrimination against women in employment, which is a relevant subject today. And there you have section 16, which prohibits it and makes it a crime. And it says that every woman has a right to work on the basis of same employment opportunities, including the application of the same criteria for selection in matters of employment. It just means be fair, in simple language. Don't discriminate. Don't require too much. Don't. Am I boring some people? Some people are dozing off. I'm trying not to be too legal. Just bear with us. So that every woman has a right to these same employment opportunities, including the application of the same selection criteria. Because if you make it more difficult for the woman to get the job, you have discriminated against her. We know that some people do it consciously or unconsciously, for one reason or another. Free choice of employment and profession. These may sound very basic, but they need to be spelled out. The law needs to be clear. That's why the provisions are there. So that if they are not complied with, if they are violated, one can see it clearly and have a provision to rely on. So everyone has a right to free choice of profession and employment. A right to promotion. We see a lot of problems here. Sometimes people sit on people's promotions when they deserve promotion for one reason or another. It's all part of discrimination. They have to work, some women feel they have to work twice as hard to get what men can get in terms of promotion, job security, benefits, and other conditions of service. Also to receive vocational training, retraining, apprenticeships. So it just, spells out a lot of them. And also equal remuneration. Why not? Equal pay for equal work done. That's common sense. But you'd be surprised, it doesn't always happen. Some men will get paid more for doing the same job as women. I don't know how serious, because as was said earlier, we need studies to really inform us. That way we know where the problem lies and where it is, how well we're doing, for example, assessing what we're doing and what is needed to get back on the right track. So the equal remuneration, equal treatment in respect of work, and evaluation of work also, very important. Social security benefits, you may think it's very basic, but it needs to be spelled out. So it cannot be taken for granted. So a woman has a right to any available social security benefits, particularly in cases of retirement, unemployment, sickness, invalidity, and old age, etc. As well as the right to paid leave. Basically, to be given her rights. Yeah. And then we come to maternity leave. This is the most exciting one. This is as exciting as I will get on these legal professions. The one on maternity leave is every woman is entitled, Section 20, to a period of 6 months maternity leave with pay or with comparable social benefits without loss of employment, seniority or similar benefits. In the beginning, when the Women's Act was enacted, this section was driving, I know at least private employers, crazy, because they're only thinking about the monetary profit. If the woman goes away for 6 months and doesn't work, I have to replace her. They forget that no price can be put on giving somebody life and taking care of them. So the human price far, far outweighs the monetary price. You are investing in human development. It stemmed from, I believe, research from the UN and international organizations that with particularly African women wanting to be superwomen, shall I say. I think we are superwomen. We are still taking charge of the traditional role, and we're also going out to work. So how do we make it easier for them? So that the human aspect of it, human development of the child does not suffer, because the children are the future of tomorrow. So it was recommended that if babies would breastfeed exclusively for 6 months, they're in much better position, much better health to turn out well. And that was why this 6 months was recommended. So a lot of sensitization had to be done, but at that time, most of them just saw the profit. Oh, what if you just employ somebody now and they get pregnant? Yes, that is part of life. Procreation is part of life. Certain things that just have to be accepted. You have no choice, because if that woman doesn't get pregnant, what happens to the world? If women don't get pregnant, we all wouldn't have been born. So it's an investment that was very necessary, and over time, I believe now many who are hostile in the beginning have realized they have no choice, and they've learned to live with it, which is what we told them in the beginning. You have to learn to live with it. You have a problem you can't take away, you learn to deal with it. You make provision for it, because women are known to be very, very productive. If the environment is conducive and they accept a particular task, they go all the way. Not that men don't do it, but by our very nature, women are very productive. So, in order to reinforce, just as I said, the common responsibility of men and women, the men are given 10 days. I used to get, oh, okay, but 10 days is too small, but it's enough for the ngente and the yegle and the, I don't know what else, but because many don't even help the wives, but many do also. Many also do, and beyond what they can do. I have seen people who've got off work early to come and help the wife that has just delivered. So the men are entitled to the 10 days. And if you're not given it, you have a cause to complain. So it remains somewhat controversial, even though, as I said, it's still, many are complying. And here, if we compare the Labour Act, Section 71(1), with the Section 20, you will see that there's it doesn't quite tally. Section 71(1), the Labour Act was enacted in 2007, before the Women's Act. And it tried to deal with the situation of maternity leave. It said if you've been in continuous employment for at least 2 years, exactly, or aggregate, another aggregate, then you are entitled to 6 weeks. But in coming into force of the Women's Act, it certainly overrides it, being the later one. And there are provisions here that say that if there's any other law that's inconsistent with it, the other one is null and void. So then there's no problem. There was a lot of hoopla a few years ago to repeal it and try to deal with it, but we still have that. Yeah, they need to be reconciled. There was a draft a few years ago, but I don't know how, where that is still. But in any case, it is 6 months that employers are entitled to give a female employee, no matter how long they have been with your institution. Now, there's also a provision on protection of health and safety at work, because if the woman is not healthy, if she's exposed to dangers, etc., how well can she perform her duty? I'll be also. Discrimination used in marriage or maternity. Yeah. So, when it says that this is what the woman is entitled to, it says if she's not given it, there's a breach in the law. So it goes on to prohibit it. Every form of discrimination against women on grounds of maternity is hereby prohibited. I had a case when the Women's Act was first enacted. The woman gave birth, got pregnant, and the employer transferred her to somewhere very, very far. All her family are down in the Greater Bangalore area for no reason whatsoever. And he actually came to my office and said, but why can't I do this? She works for me. I said, you can't do it because there's a law. There's a law. And there's no reason why you cannot send somebody else. This woman is pregnant and needs to be closer to the family. Send somebody else. But he did it to discourage her so that she could quit. These are the things that we battle with. Because then she was considering it. I said, no, you can't do that. Let's get him to understand the reasoning behind this provision and let's get him to comply. Eventually he did. Yes. So it also says that you cannot dismiss somebody from employment on the grounds of maternity. Certainly cannot. And anyone who contravenes it commits an offense and there's a fine or even imprisonment depending on the circumstances of the case. So it's good to know the law. Now, support services here, within the limits, it says, every employer shall endeavor to provide within the limits of his or her resources. It's not, because the law requires that you can't impose what may be onerous to the employer as well. So if they can afford it, and increasingly we see, particularly in the private sector, employers realizing the value of women in work, their contribution when they actually come to work and they don't have to worry about the babies. Some of them even have the creche downstairs or just something to facilitate so that the woman will give full attention to the job and give you value for what you pay her. So protection during pregnancy also, right to be protected, not exposed to harmful effects. And the law also says that, okay, this is the law of 2010, but there should be periodic review of the legislation, and in the light of scientific and technological knowledge, to repeal some, some may be needed, some may not. This part is of fundamental importance to the contribution of women in the socio-economic development of the country. It ensures that women are afforded equal opportunity, equal rights in the field of employment. It ensures also the support services. There's just the reasoning behind it, and facilities are put in place for women to continue to take part in nation building. Because the woman gets pregnant, okay, that's 9 months. 9 months of sometimes sickness and all other things. Some are very, very productive at that time, but some are not if they go to work. And after that also. So can you imagine if you were to have measures in place that would mitigate that? You could still benefit a great deal from the woman. And it recognized the contribution of women during the period of maternity and blah, blah, blah. Now, It further ensures that women in the Gambia are not disadvantaged in any way during this crucial yet important period in the human cycle. I cannot emphasize that enough. Now, the 6 months, as I say, it's the most you get. Maybe a few other countries have it, but even in the US, we have 3 months. Or the 6 months is good for us, and we can see that it really helps. Now, section 15.1 is important just before I come to the end, because it requires temporary special measures, because when the Women's Act was enacted, of course, it can't happen overnight. You can't implement all of it overnight. You can't have gender equality overnight. So it required temporary special measures to be put in place to ensure de facto equality, to accelerate a way of positively discriminating. And that will be fine, perfectly fine. It recognizes that gender equality may not be achieved, as I say, in the short term, so it imposes this. And these are the provisions there. And here again, it says every organ, body, public institution, authority, or private enterprise shall adopt temporary special measures. So it's not just government. So I think private institutions need to really take note, and I think they have been taking note and ensuring that the Act is complied with. Now, considering the social and cultural setup of the Gambia, there has been many instances where even where the law does not discriminate or create or cause any impediment, the social and cultural environment may not be conducive for achieving gender equality. I think that's one of the reasons why we're here today. The biases, the patriarchy, the women should be at the back, the jigen mutut. Yes, that one, it's like you stab me in the heart anytime I hear anyone say that. I don't know where that came from and what the reasoning is behind jigen mutut, kan mo mut. It depends on, you take each as you find them. You have, men have faults, women have faults, but jigen mutut, where that came from and what the reasoning, if all the grandmothers and grandfathers have are still around, we should ask them perhaps. Now, yeah, so even where the laws don't discriminate, the social and cultural aspects come into play. Now, and it goes further to say that they shall take appropriate measures to protect the maternity status and reproductive health of women. Because it realizes that this is our primary role in this life. Procreation, giving birth to humans. That is the first role, and that role cannot and should not be relegated at the expense of profit or anything else. As I said, the value cannot be compared. And there are penal provisions. Penal means the when crimes are, offenses are created, and provisions throughout the Act for non-compliance or violations of the provisions. And also, of course, all this will cost money, so there should be budgetary allocation for monitoring the implementation of this Act. I don't know how much of it government has still done, but that needs to continue to be done. And in conclusion, it is hoped that armed with this knowledge and understanding, or at least some knowledge and understanding of the law on gender equality at the workplace, employers, management, or public or private institutions, agencies, corporations will be better equipped in working towards attaining this objective. As a result, they will in turn reap the benefits as women, when given the chance, are by their very nature, as I said earlier, very productive. I thank you all and look forward to the further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nene, for such a comprehensive presentation of the legal aspects concerning gender equality and unconscious bias. I think this is a good point for us to have a coffee break, and then we can take 15 minutes and come back so that we can have the other presentations. In the meantime, as Nene mentioned, we can take note of some of the provisions she has highlighted here as they affect the work we do and our work environment. And during the discussions and Q&A session, we can seek clarifications with regard to some of these provisions, so that she can also provide those clarifications adequately. As has been mentioned, that now we should move or progress from the point of recognizing some of these issues to actually taking actions on them. And we hope that after today's session, we should be able to take away, some skills or some techniques that we can implement or advocate for when we get back to our organizations to implement our policies to advance the gender agenda in our respective organizations. Thank you. So break is taking place at the cafeteria upstairs. The assistants would guide you to look at the cafeteria. Thank you. 15 minutes and then we come back.
I don't think